Jake Murphy stared out the window of his small room and saw stars everywhere. Not the stars he knew from Earth, but strange new ones that looked different. He was inside an alien spaceship, far from home, and he still couldn't believe it was real. 3 weeks ago, Jake had been working as an engineer in Houston. He fixed machines and solved problems. His life was normal and quiet. Then everything changed when the aliens arrived. The Valtori came to Earth in huge ships that covered the sky. They didn't attack or threaten. They just appeared and asked to talk. The whole world watched as these tall, elegant beings stepped out of their ships. They looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin had a slight blue tint, and their eyes were larger and completely silver. They moved with perfect grace, like dancers. Earth's governments quickly put together a team to meet with them. They needed engineers, scientists, diplomats, and military officers. Jake got picked because he was good at fixing things and understanding how machines worked. He never thought his simple skills would take him to space. Now he was here, on the largest Valtori ship, traveling toward their home world. The ship was called the Star of Valtor, and it was bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. The hallways were wide and tall, with smooth walls that glowed softly with blue light. Everything looked clean and perfect. Commander Harris led their human group. He was a serious man with gray hair and a firm voice. He walked around like he was still on Earth, trying to act like everything was normal. But Jake could see the worry in his eyes. Ambassador Kate Morrison was the one who did most of the talking with the Valtori. She was smart and calm, always choosing her words carefully. She wore nice suits and smiled even when Jake could tell she was nervous. There were 20 humans total in their group, scientists, guards, translators, and Jake. He felt out of place most of the time. The scientists talked about big ideas. The diplomats discussed politics. The guards stayed alert and watched everything. Jake just tried to understand the alien technology around him. The Valtori treated them well but kept them at a distance. They were polite, almost too polite. They answered questions with exact words and showed no emotions on their faces. It felt like talking to very smart computers rather than living beings. Jake had his own room in the guest section of the ship. It was small but comfortable, with a bed that adjusted to his body and walls that could show any image he wanted. He usually made them show pictures of Earth. It helped him feel less alone. The problems started on the 5th day of their journey. During a meeting, one of the human guards accidentally touched a Valtori control panel. He was just curious, but the aliens reacted badly. Alarms went off, and Valtori soldiers appeared within seconds. Commander Harris tried to explain it was an accident, but the Valtori didn't seem to understand accidents. To them, every action had purpose and meaning. They saw the touch as a possible attack or spy attempt. Ambassador Morrison spent hours trying to smooth things over. She apologized and promised it wouldn't happen again, but the damage was done. The Valtori became colder and more distant. They stationed guards outside the human quarters. That night, Commander Harris called everyone together in the common room. His face looked tired. "We have a situation," he said. "The Valtori leadership is concerned about our presence. Some of them think we're dangerous. They're considering sending us back to Earth or keeping us confined until they decide what to do." Fear spread through the group. They were millions of miles from home, surrounded by aliens who now didn't trust them. Jake felt his chest tighten. What if they never got home? What if this turned into a war? "We need to stay calm," Ambassador Morrison added. "I'm working on building trust again. But for now, we need to follow all their rules perfectly. No touching anything, no wandering around. We stay in our designated areas." The next day, Jake was moved to a different room. A Valtori officer told him they needed to reorganize the guest quarters for security reasons. His new room was in a quieter section of the ship, away from the other humans. The hallways here were fancier, with artwork on the walls and better lighting. Jake didn't know it, But his room was now near the royal wing where the Valtori leaders stayed. The guards didn't tell him this. They just pointed to his door and left. His new room was nicer than the old one, but felt more isolated. Jake could hear less noise from outside. The silence was heavy and made him feel more alone. He spent his days reading about Valtori culture on the tablet they'd given him and trying to understand their technology. The Valtori were incredibly advanced. They'd been traveling through space for thousands of years. They had conquered diseases, perfected their cities, and built an empire that spread across many planets. But something seemed missing. In all the information Jake read, there was little about art, music, or emotions. The Valtori valued logic and efficiency above all else. They made decisions based on calculations and reason. Feelings were seen as primitive and unreliable. Jake found that sad. What was life without feelings, without joy or excitement or even fear? Those things made humans human. On the third night in his new room, Jake met someone important. He was being escorted to dinner with the other humans when he saw her in the hallway. She was Valtori, but clearly different from the others. She wore elegant robes in deep purple, and she walked with guards following her. "That's Princess Lyra," his escort whispered. "The Emperor's youngest daughter. Don't stare." But Jake had already looked right at her. For just a moment, their eyes met. Her silver eyes seemed to actually see him, not just look at him like the other Valtori did. There was something in her expression, a tiny hint of curiosity maybe, that made her seem more alive than the others. Then she was past him, walking down the corridor with her guards. Jake felt his face get hot. Had he just made things worse by staring at an alien princess? That night, alone in his room, Jake couldn't sleep. His mind kept racing with worries. What if the Valtori decided humans were too dangerous? What if they never let them go home? What if this was the start of a war between Earth and an empire that had thousands of years of advanced technology? And weirdly, he kept thinking about the princess. Those silver eyes that actually looked at him like he was a person. The way she moved, so graceful and confident. He felt embarrassed for even noticing. She was an alien princess, and he was just a regular guy from Houston who fixed machines. The stress and exhaustion finally caught up with him. Jake fell into a deep, troubled sleep. He didn't know that the walls weren't as thick as he thought. He didn't know that sound traveled in strange ways through the Valtori ship's corridors, and he definitely didn't know that Princess Lyra was awake, walking those same corridors, unable to sleep herself, and thinking about the strange humans who had come to her world. Princess Lyra couldn't sleep. This happened often lately, ever since the humans arrived. Her mind was too active, filled with questions and thoughts that wouldn't quiet down. She walked through the empty corridors near the royal wing. The ship was on night cycle, with lights dimmed to let people rest. Most Valtori were sleeping in their quarters. Lyra enjoyed these quiet hours when she could think without someone watching her every move. Being a princess wasn't easy. Everyone expected her to be perfect, logical, and controlled. She had to attend boring meetings where old officials talked for hours. She had to smile politely at ceremonies. She had to hide any feelings that might seem too emotional or weak. But Lyra had a secret. She was fascinated by emotions. While other Valtori studied mathematics and efficiency, she secretly read about ancient Valtori history, back when her people used to feel more freely. She wondered what it was like to laugh without thinking about it first, or to cry just because something was sad. The humans intrigued her greatly. She'd watched recordings of their arrival and studied their behavior during meetings. They were so expressive. Their faces showed everything they felt. They used their hands when they talked. They laughed at things that weren't logically funny. It was strange and wonderful. Her father, the Emperor, wasn't sure about the humans. Some of his advisors said humans were dangerous and unpredictable. Others said they could be useful allies. Lyra thought both sides were missing the point. The humans were interesting because they were different, not despite it. As she walked, Lyra heard something unusual, a voice, muffled and unclear, coming from one of the guest rooms. She stopped and listened carefully. Was someone in distress? She moved closer to the door. The voice was speaking English, the human language she'd been studying. Her translator implant helped her understand the words, though they came in pieces. The ship is so big. How do they build something this large? Lyra recognized that it was the human from the hallway, the engineer. His name was Jake Murphy, according to the files. But this didn't sound like normal talking. The words were slow and mumbled. Everything is blue. Pretty blue lights. She realized he was sleep-talking. Humans did this sometimes, her research had mentioned. They spoke while dreaming, saying things their conscious mind wouldn't say. How fascinating. Lyra knew she should walk away. This was private, and it was inappropriate for a princess to listen to a guest's unconscious thoughts. But curiosity held her there. What did humans dream about? The meeting tomorrow. What if I say something wrong? What if I mess up and they send us home? The worry in his voice was clear even through sleep. Lyra felt something strange in her chest. Was this sympathy? The human was afraid, just like she sometimes felt afraid of disappointing her father. The technology here is incredible. I wish I could understand it all. Want to learn how it works? Lyra smiled slightly. So he was curious too, not just scared. That was good. Then Jake's voice changed, becoming softer and even more mumbled. Saw the princess today. Princess Lyra. She looked right at me. Lyra froze. He was talking about her? Her eyes were so strange. Beautiful, though. Like silver mirrors. Never seen anything like that. Her hand moved to her chest. No one talked about her like this. People praised her intelligence or her diplomatic skills or her family name. No one ever called her beautiful. Beauty was emotional and subjective. It wasn't logical. She walked like she was floating, so graceful. Made me nervous. What if I made a bad impression? Jake's sleeping voice continued, mixing anxiety with awe. She's an actual princess, and I'm just a guy who fixes things. Probably thinks humans are weird. I probably look stupid staring at her. Then his voice dropped to barely a whisper. Hope I see her again. Seems different from the others. Like maybe she actually sees us as people. Something happened inside Lyra that she didn't expect. A sound came out of her mouth, soft and quick. It took her a moment to recognize it. She had chuckled. She actually chuckled. A sound of amusement and warmth that she hadn't made in years. The sound surprised her so much that she put her hand over her mouth. Valtori didn't chuckle spontaneously. They might show calculated amusement in social situations, but real, uncontrolled laughter was considered primitive. Children sometimes laughed, but they were trained out of it as they grew up. Yet here she was, a grown princess, chuckling at a sleeping human's honest words. Why did his words affect her so much? Maybe because they were real. He wasn't trying to impress anyone or gain favor. He was just honestly expressing his thoughts, even if those thoughts were confused and anxious and a bit silly. He thought she was beautiful. He hoped to see her again. He thought she saw humans as people. He was right about that last part. She did see them as people. Maybe she was the only Valtori who truly did. Lyra stood there for a long moment, listening as Jake's sleep-talking faded into quiet breathing. She should leave before someone found her here. If the guard saw a princess standing outside a guest's door in the middle of the night, there would be questions. But she felt different now. This strange human had made her laugh without meaning to. He'd shown her that someone could be scared and curious and kind all at the same time. He'd reminded her that seeing someone as beautiful wasn't a weakness, but a gift. She quietly moved away from the door and continued her walk. But her mind was no longer restless. Instead, it was focused on a new thought. The advisors who wanted to send the humans away were wrong. These beings had something valuable, something the Valtori had lost long ago. The ability to feel honestly and openly. The ability to be vulnerable. Tomorrow, she would review the security reports about the incident with the control panel. She would look at the evidence herself. She had a feeling that the situation wasn't as serious as some advisors were claiming. As she returned to her own quarters, Lyra made a decision. She would help the humans if she could, not just because it was logical or politically useful, but because Jake Murphy, in his sleep, had treated her like a real person. That deserved something in return. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling groggy. He had vague memories of strange dreams, but couldn't remember the details. His mouth was dry and his head felt fuzzy. Too much stress and not enough good sleep. He got ready for the day, putting on clean clothes and trying to make himself look presentable. The humans had a meeting scheduled with some Valtori officials. Ambassador Morrison said it was important to make a good impression. When Jake joined the others in the common area, he noticed the tension immediately. Commander Harris looked even more serious than usual. The guards were checking their equipment nervously. "What's going on?" Jake asked quietly. One of the scientists, a woman named Lisa Brooks, whispered back. "Rumors. Some of the Valtori leadership want us confined to quarters permanently or sent home immediately. There's a big debate happening in their council." Jake's stomach dropped. This was getting worse. The meeting was held in a large conference room with a huge window showing space outside. Several Valtori officials sat on one side of a long table. They all had the same neutral expressions and perfect posture. Ambassador Morrison led the human side, speaking carefully and respectfully. She explained again that the control panel incident was an accident. She promised better supervision and training for all humans on the ship. The Valtori officials listened without showing any reaction. One of them, an older male with elaborate robes, spoke in a flat voice. "Your species shows poor impulse control. You act on curiosity without considering consequences. This is dangerous in our environment." Commander Harris started to respond, but before he could, the door opened. Everyone turned to look. Princess Lyra entered the room. She wore formal robes and walked with complete confidence. Her guards followed but stayed by the door. All the Valtori officials immediately stood and bowed slightly. The humans quickly did the same, not wanting to be disrespectful. "Please continue," Lyra said in perfect English. Her voice was calm but had a quality that made people listen. "I wish to observe these proceedings. My father, the Emperor, has asked me to report my impressions." The officials looked uncomfortable, but couldn't refuse a direct member of the royal family. They sat back down, and the meeting continued. But Jake noticed something. As Princess Lyra took a seat to the side of the room, her silver eyes scanned the humans. When her gaze passed over him, just for the briefest moment, there seemed to be something there. Recognition, maybe, or interest. Then she looked away, her face returning to the neutral Valtori expression. Jake felt his face get warm. Why did he keep reacting to her like this? It was embarrassing and inappropriate. She was an alien princess, and he needed to focus on the serious situation they were in. But as the meeting dragged on with boring political talk, Jake couldn't help glancing her way occasionally. And once, just once, he caught her glancing back at him. Something had changed, though Jake didn't know what. He had no memory of his sleep-talking or what he'd said. He didn't know that Princess Lyra had heard his honest, unconscious thoughts. But she knew, and it had changed everything. Princess Lyra spent the next 2 days reviewing everything about the control panel incident. She accessed security recordings, read technical reports, and interviewed the guards who had been present. The more she investigated, the more suspicious she became. The human guard had barely touched the panel. It was a light touch, lasting less than 2 seconds. According to the technical data, that touch couldn't have activated anything dangerous. The panel wasn't even connected to critical systems. It controlled lighting and temperature in a small storage area, yet the alarm that went off was a Level 3 security alert, usually reserved for actual intrusions or attacks. Someone had programmed the system to overreact. Someone wanted the humans to look dangerous. Lyra dug deeper. She found communication records between certain advisors, officials who had opposed contact with Earth from the beginning. They had discussed how to demonstrate the risk of human presence. They'd used careful language, but the meaning was clear. They had set up the incident. This was manipulation. Her father had taught her to value truth and logic above all else. These advisors were doing the opposite. They were creating false evidence to support their prejudice. She needed to present this to her father, but she had to be careful. The advisors were powerful and well-connected. If she accused them without perfect proof, they would turn the situation against her. Meanwhile, Jake and the other humans remained confined to their quarters most of the time. They could move between rooms in their section but couldn't explore the ship or interact with the Valtori crew. It felt like being in a comfortable prison. Jake tried to stay busy. He studied Valtori engineering documents and worked on understanding their power systems. But his mind kept wandering to that meeting where Princess Lyra had appeared. Something about her presence had changed the atmosphere. The officials had been less aggressive after she arrived. He wondered if she had any influence over their situation. Probably not, he told himself. She was young, maybe around his age in human terms. The old officials wouldn't listen to her opinions. On the third day, something unexpected happened. Jake was in his room, reading a technical manual on his tablet, when his door chimed. That was the Valtori version of knocking. He opened the door and froze. Princess Lyra stood there with only one guard beside her. She looked at him with those striking silver eyes, and Jake's brain seemed to stop working. "Engineer Murphy," she said formally, "I require your assistance with a technical matter. Will you accompany me?" Jake's mouth opened, but no words came out for a second. Then he managed, "Yes, of course, Your Highness." He wasn't sure if Your Highness was the right term for a Valtori princess, but she didn't correct him. She simply turned and started walking. Jake quickly followed, his heart beating fast. They walked through corridors Jake had never seen before. The guard stayed several steps behind them, giving them space but watching carefully. Jake's mind raced with questions. Why did she need him? What technical matter? Was this real or was he in trouble? Finally, they entered a large room filled with equipment and displays. It looked like some kind of laboratory or research center. The walls showed star maps and streams of data. "This is a secure room," Princess Lyra said, her voice still formal. "Our conversation here is private." She nodded to the guard, who stepped outside and closed the door. Now they were alone. Jake felt even more nervous. Lyra's expression changed slightly. Her perfect, formal mask softened just a little. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to a chair near a workstation. Jake sat, confused but obedient. Lyra remained standing, her hands folded in front of her. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Jake had no idea what to say or do. "I heard you," Lyra finally said quietly. 3 nights ago. You were speaking in your sleep." Jake's face instantly went hot. Oh no, oh no, no, no. What had he said? He sometimes talked in his sleep when stressed. His roommate in college had mentioned it, but he never remembered what he said. "I didn't mean to listen," Lyra continued. "I was walking and heard your voice. I was concerned you might be in distress." I'm sorry," Jake stammered. "I don't remember what I said. If I said anything offensive or inappropriate, I apologize. I was just stressed and—" "You called me beautiful," Lyra interrupted. Her voice was still quiet. but there was something in it Jake couldn't identify. You said my eyes were like silver mirrors. You said I walked like I was floating. Jake wanted to disappear into the floor. This couldn't be happening. He'd basically confessed to thinking an alien princess was attractive while unconscious. This was the worst possible situation. "I'm so sorry," he said again, his voice weak. "That was completely inappropriate. You're royalty and I'm just—" "No one has ever spoken about me that way," Lyra said, and now Jake could hear the emotion in her voice. It sounded like wonder. "They praise my intelligence or my diplomatic skills. They respect my position, but no one sees me as just a person who might be beautiful." Jake looked up at her, surprised. Lyra's silver eyes were focused on him with an intensity that made him forget his embarrassment for a moment. "You also said you hoped to see me again," she continued. "You said I seemed different from the others, that I might see humans as people." "I do think that," Jake admitted carefully. "You look at us differently, like you're actually curious rather than just studying specimens." "I am curious," Lyra said. She moved to a chair near him and sat, which felt significant. Princesses probably didn't usually sit with common engineers. "Your species fascinates me. You feel so freely. You express emotions without calculating whether they're appropriate first. It's remarkable." "The other Valtori don't think so," Jake said. "They think we're dangerous and unpredictable." "Some do," Lyra agreed, "but they're wrong. Or rather, they're letting their fear control their logic." She paused, then added, "I have something to show you." She activated the workstation, and holographic displays appeared in the air between them. Jake saw security footage, technical reports, and communication logs. "This is evidence about the control panel incident," Lyra explained. "The alarm shouldn't have triggered. Someone programmed it to overreact. They wanted to make your people look dangerous." Jake leaned forward, his engineering mind engaging. He studied the technical specifications. "This panel only controls environmental systems. Touching it shouldn't have done anything." "Exactly," Lyra said. "Some advisors manipulated the situation. They oppose contact with Earth and want my father to send you away or imprison you." "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because you treated me like a person when you didn't even know I could hear you. Because your honesty, even unconscious honesty, meant something to me. And because I believe keeping your people here under false charges is wrong." Jake felt something shift in his chest. This alien princess was risking something by telling him this. He didn't fully understand Valtori politics, but he knew showing him this evidence had to be against some rules. "What can we do?" he asked. "I need to present this to my father," Lyra said. "But the advisors will defend themselves. They'll say I'm too young or too emotional. They'll try to dismiss the evidence." She looked directly at Jake. "I need your help to make the case stronger." "How can I help?" "You understand the technology. You can explain in ways that are logical and clear. If we work together to prepare the presentation, combining Valtori logic with human clarity, we might convince my father." Jake nodded slowly. "Okay, yes. I'll help however I can." "There's risk," Lyra warned. "If the advisors discover what we're doing, they might take action against both of us. They could accuse me of improper conduct with a guest. They could claim you're influencing me." "I don't want you to get in trouble because of me," Jake said. Lyra smiled then, a real smile that transformed her face. It was the first time Jake had seen any Valtori truly smile. "You know what I realized when I heard you talking in your sleep? I've been following rules my whole life, trying to be the perfect logical princess. But logic without compassion is just mathematics. Real wisdom includes understanding people and caring about what's right." She stood up, and Jake stood too. They were close now, and even though they came from different worlds, Jake felt like they understood each other. "We should begin working on the presentation," Lyra said, back to business, but with warmth still in her voice. We don't have much time. The council will vote on your people's fate in 3 days. 3 days, Jake repeated. Okay, let's do this. As they started organizing the evidence and planning their approach, Jake realized something. He'd come to space expecting aliens to be completely foreign and impossible to connect with. But here was Princess Lyra, and despite her silver eyes and blue skin and different culture, she felt more real and honest than many humans he'd known. And she was trusting him. A nobody engineer from Houston, because he'd accidentally told the truth about her in his sleep. Sometimes the strangest situations led to the most important connections. They worked together late into the ship's night, combining her knowledge of Valtori systems with his engineering insights. Lyra showed him how to present ideas in ways that would appeal to logical Valtori minds. Jake showed her how to add emotional weight to arguments without losing credibility. When they finally stopped, exhausted, Lyra looked at the prepared presentation with satisfaction. This might actually work, she said. I hope so, Jake replied, for all our sakes. As Jake returned to his quarters with a guard escort, his mind was spinning. In 3 days, they would present their case. The future of human-Valtori relations might depend on it. But more than that, he'd found an unexpected ally, and maybe even a friend. Princess Lyra had taken his sleep-talking confession and turned it into something meaningful. He just hoped they could pull this off before the advisors discovered their plan. The next morning, Jake woke early with a strange mix of excitement and fear. He and Princess Lyra had a plan, but so much could go wrong. He got dressed quickly and tried to act normal when he joined the other humans for breakfast. Commander Harris was talking quietly with Ambassador Morrison in the corner. They both looked worried. The other humans ate their food in silence, the tension obvious in the room. Lisa Brooks sat down next to Jake with her tray. Any idea what's happening? She whispered. The Valtori guards have been acting strange. More of them than usual. Jake shook his head. He wanted to tell someone about his meeting with Princess Lyra, but he'd promised to keep it secret. If word got out, the advisors would find out and stop them. Hopefully we'll know soon, he said vaguely. What Jake didn't know was that someone had already noticed unusual activity. One of the advisors, a stern official named Senior Counselor Dravik, had access to security systems. He'd seen Princess Lyra entering the private research room with the human engineer. He'd seen them staying there for hours. Dravik didn't know what they'd discussed, but he didn't like it. The princess had been asking too many questions about the control panel incident. She was becoming a problem. That afternoon, Dravik made his move. He called an emergency council meeting without informing Princess Lyra. He brought evidence of her inappropriate contact with the human. In front of the Emperor and other advisors, he suggested that the princess was being influenced by the humans, that she was compromising security. The Emperor, Lyra's father, listened with a neutral expression. He was a tall, imposing Valtori with robes even more elaborate than his daughter's. His face showed nothing, but inside he was troubled. His youngest daughter had always been different, more curious and emotional than proper. But he'd never thought she would act inappropriately with guests. Where is Princess Lyra now? The Emperor asked. In her quarters, Your Majesty, Dravik said. I thought it wise to present this information to you first. Summon her, the Emperor commanded. I will hear her explanation. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra was in her quarters reviewing the presentation one more time. She'd refined the arguments, organized the evidence perfectly. Tomorrow, they would present it to her father. Tomorrow, everything would change. Her door chimed. 2 guards entered and bowed. Princess, your presence is required in the council chamber immediately. Lyra felt a chill. This wasn't scheduled. Something was wrong. She followed the guards, her mind racing. Had someone discovered their plan? She carried a small data device with all their evidence, keeping it hidden in the folds of her robe. If this was a trap, she'd need it. When she entered the council chamber, she saw her father seated at the head of the table. Senior Counselor Dravik stood to one side, along with several other advisors who opposed human contact. This was definitely not good. "Father," Lyra said, bowing respectfully. "Daughter," the Emperor replied. His voice was calm but cold. "I have received concerning reports about your activities. You met privately with one of the human delegates yesterday. Explain yourself." Lyra kept her composure. She'd been trained for political situations since childhood. "I was investigating the control panel incident, Father. I asked Engineer Murphy for technical consultation because he understands their systems." "You spent hours alone with this human," Dravik interjected, "in a private room. This is highly inappropriate for someone of your position." "I was doing research," Lyra said firmly. "Would you prefer I make decisions based on incomplete information?" "The decision about the humans has already been made," Dravik said. "The Council has voted. We will keep them confined until we reach our home world, then send them back to Earth with a diplomatic rejection. Your investigation is unnecessary." "The vote hasn't happened yet," Lyra countered. "It's scheduled for tomorrow." "It happened this morning," Dravik said with barely concealed satisfaction. "An emergency session. We saw no reason to delay given the security concerns." Lyra felt anger rise in her chest, a hot feeling that the Valtori were trained to suppress. They'd gone behind her back. They'd rushed the vote to prevent her from presenting evidence. "The decision was made on false information," she said, her voice rising slightly. "The control panel incident was manufactured. I have proof." The Emperor leaned forward. "Proof? Show me." Lyra pulled out her data device and activated it. Holographic displays appeared above the table, showing security footage, technical specifications, and communication logs. "The panel touched by the human guard was not connected to critical systems," she explained. "The alarm was programmed to overreact. These communications show that certain advisors planned this to make humans appear dangerous." The room went silent. The advisors looked at the evidence, and several faces showed concern. Dravik's expression remained neutral, but Lyra could see tension in his posture. "This is a serious accusation," the Emperor said slowly. "You're claiming that members of my council deliberately deceived us?" "I'm claiming that bias led to manipulation of facts," Lyra said. "Whether intentional or not, the result is the same. Our decision about humanity is based on false premises." Dravik stepped forward. "This evidence could be interpreted multiple ways, Your Majesty. More concerning is how the princess obtained it. She clearly worked with the human engineer to build this case. How do we know he didn't influence her interpretation? How do we know this isn't human manipulation?" "Engineer Murphy helped me understand technical details," Lyra admitted. "But the evidence speaks for itself. The alarm protocols were changed the day before the incident. The panel's connection to critical systems was severed. These are facts, not interpretations." "Facts gathered through inappropriate contact with a human," Dravik pressed. "Your Majesty, the princess has shown exactly why we must be cautious. The humans are influencing her judgment. She's developing emotional attachments that cloud her logic." The Emperor looked at his daughter for a long moment. Lyra met his gaze steadily, even though inside she was terrified. Her father valued logic above all else. If he believed she was being emotional and irrational, he would dismiss everything. "Lyra," the Emperor said quietly, "tell me truthfully. Have you developed feelings for this human engineer?" The chamber was completely silent. Every advisor waited for her answer. Lyra knew this was the critical moment. If she lied, she betrayed everything she'd learned from Jake about honesty. If she told the truth, she might lose all credibility. She took a breath. "I find him interesting, Father. He's honest in a way that's rare. He sees me as a person, not just a princess. But my investigation began before I met him. I had suspicions about the incident from the start. Working with him helped me understand the technical evidence, but didn't create the evidence itself. You admit to emotional involvement, Dravik said, pouncing on her words. This proves our point. Being interested in someone doesn't make me blind, Lyra countered. I can have feelings and still think logically. In fact, understanding emotions helps me see motivations more clearly. Like understanding that some advisors fear humans because change is uncomfortable, not because humans are actually dangerous. Enough, the Emperor said, holding up his hand. I will review this evidence carefully. Princess Lyra, return to your quarters. You are confined there until I make my decision. Father, please. I said enough. His voice was firm. Guards, escort the princess. Lyra had no choice. She bowed and left with the guards, her data device confiscated. As she walked through the corridors, she felt despair settling over her. They'd moved too slowly. The advisors had outmaneuvered them. Back in the council chamber, the Emperor studied the evidence alone. He dismissed everyone, including Dravik, telling them he needed time to think. The truth was, his daughter's evidence was compelling. The technical data was clear. Someone had manipulated the alarm systems, but Dravik's point about emotional compromise was also valid. Lyra had admitted interest in the human. Could he trust her judgment? Or was she being manipulated without realizing it? Meanwhile, Jake had heard nothing from Princess Lyra all day. He didn't know about the emergency council meeting or her confinement. He only knew something felt wrong. The atmosphere in the human quarters had become even more tense. That evening, Commander Harris called everyone together. His face was grim. I received word from the Valtori leadership, he said. They've decided to send us home. We'll be escorted back to Earth and diplomatic relations will be suspended. They've determined that humans are too unpredictable for safe contact. Shocked silence filled the room. Then people started talking all at once, some angry, some scared. This is ridiculous, Lisa Brooks said. We've done nothing wrong except for one accidental touch. When do we leave? Someone else asked. 2 days, Harris replied. They're preparing an escort ship now. Jake felt sick. Their plan had failed before they could even present it. Whatever happened with Princess Lyra, it hadn't worked. Now, humanity's chance for alien contact was ending before it really began. That night, Jake couldn't sleep again. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About Princess Lyra and her silver eyes. About her courage in investigating the truth. About how she'd trusted him and now was probably in trouble because of it. He had to do something. But what could he do? He was confined to quarters, about to be sent home in disgrace. Then he remembered something. During their work session, Lyra had shown him how to access the ship's communication system from his room's control panel. She'd done it to send him files, but the access code might still work. It was late, well into the ship's night cycle. Jake got up and went to his control panel. He entered the access code Lyra had given him, not really expecting it to work. But it did. The panel lit up with options. He could send a message. Jake thought carefully. He couldn't contact Princess Lyra directly. That would be monitored. But maybe he could contact the Emperor himself. It was probably against all protocol, but they were being sent away anyway. What did he have to lose? He composed a message, keeping it simple and honest. He explained who he was. He explained that Princess Lyra had investigated the incident fairly and logically. He explained that humans weren't perfect, but they were trying to learn and grow. He asked for a chance to prove humanity's worth. Then, before he could overthink it, Jake sent the message directly to the Emperor's private communication channel. It was probably foolish. The Emperor probably wouldn't even see it. But Jake had learned from Lyra that honesty and courage mattered, even when the odds were bad. He went back to bed, not knowing if his message would change anything, not knowing that in the royal wing, An emperor was reading his words carefully, and not knowing that Princess Lyra, confined to her quarters and feeling hopeless, was about to receive an unexpected summons from her father. The emperor sat in his private chamber, reading Jake's message for the third time. The human's words were simple and honest, without political calculation. He wrote like someone who expected nothing but felt he had to try anyway. What struck the emperor most was how the human defended his daughter, not with flattery or manipulation, but with genuine respect for her intelligence and integrity. He wrote about how she'd approached the investigation logically, how she'd combined Valtori reasoning with human insight. The emperor had ruled for decades. He'd heard every kind of political speech, every kind of manipulation. He knew when people were trying to use him. This message wasn't like that. It was just honest. He activated his communication panel. "Bring me Princess Lyra." Minutes later, Lyra entered his chamber. She looked tired and worried, but she kept her composure. She bowed respectfully and waited. "Your human friend sent me a message," the emperor said without preamble. "Engineer Murphy. He broke protocol to defend you and argue for his people's case." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Jake sent you a message? How did he—" "You gave him access codes, apparently," the emperor said. His tone was neutral. "Another breach of protocol." "I needed to send him files for our investigation," Lyra explained. "I didn't expect him to use them to contact you directly." "Yet he did." The emperor gestured to a chair. "Sit, daughter. We need to talk honestly." Lyra sat, surprised. Her father rarely invited such informal conversations. "I've reviewed all the evidence carefully," the emperor continued. "The technical data is clear. Someone did manipulate the alarm system. The humans were set up to look dangerous." Relief flooded through Lyra. "Then you believe me?" "I believe the evidence," he corrected. "But I'm troubled, Lyra. Not because you were wrong, but because you risked so much for these humans. Why? What makes them important enough to defy advisors and break protocol?" Lyra took a moment to organize her thoughts. "Because they have something we lost, Father. They feel freely. They create art and music not because it's efficient, but because it brings them joy. They're honest about their emotions instead of hiding them. When Engineer Murphy talked about me in his sleep, he said things no one has ever said. He saw me as beautiful, not just competent. He saw me as a person. And this matters to you?" "Yes," Lyra said firmly. "For years I've wondered why our civilization feels so empty despite all our achievements. We've conquered diseases and perfected our technology, but when was the last time anyone laughed spontaneously? When did we last create something just because it was beautiful? We've become so logical that we forgot how to live." The emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised Lyra. "I used to laugh when I was young, before I became emperor. I remember the feeling." His voice was soft, almost sad. "You're right that we've lost something, but I'm not sure we can get it back by simply exposing ourselves to humans." "Maybe not," Lyra agreed. "But we can learn from them, and they can learn from us. Imagine combining human creativity with Valtori logic. Imagine what we could achieve together." "Or imagine the chaos," the emperor countered. "Emotions can be destructive. They lead to wars and irrational decisions." "Suppressing emotions leads to other problems," Lyra argued. "Advisors who manipulate evidence because they fear change. Societies that feel empty despite having everything. Father, I'm not saying we should abandon logic. I'm saying we should remember that logic alone isn't enough for a full life." The emperor stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Your mother would have agreed with you," he said quietly. "She always said I thought too much and felt too little." Lyra had never heard her father mention her mother this way. The empress had died when Lyra was young. Their culture didn't encourage talking about grief. "I miss her," Lyra said softly. I know that's emotional and impractical, but I miss her." "So do I," the Emperor admitted. He turned back to his daughter. "Perhaps that's why your words affect me more than they should. You remind me of her. Bold and feeling and alive in ways I forgot were possible." He returned to his seat. "I'm going to reverse the Council's decision. The humans will stay. We'll continue diplomatic discussions, and I'm going to investigate who exactly manipulated that alarm system. There will be consequences." Lyra felt tears form in her eyes, an emotional response that she didn't try to hide. "Thank you, Father." "But," he continued, his tone becoming firmer, "there are conditions. Your involvement with Engineer Murphy must be supervised and appropriate. No more private meetings without proper protocols. And you will work directly with me on the human diplomacy, so I can see this potential you speak of." "I understand," Lyra said. "I won't disappoint you." "You already haven't," the Emperor said, and there was warmth in his voice. "You showed courage and integrity. Those matter more than following every rule perfectly." The next morning, Commander Harris received an official summons. The entire human delegation was requested to attend a formal meeting with the Emperor himself. Harris had no idea what to expect, but he gathered everyone and tried to project confidence. They were led to a grand chamber with high ceilings and beautiful artwork on the walls. The Emperor sat on an elevated platform, with Princess Lyra standing to his right. Various Valtori advisors and officials lined the walls. Jake noticed immediately that Senior Counselor Dravik wasn't present. He wondered what that meant. The Emperor stood as the humans entered. "Welcome," he said in perfect English. "Please, come forward." Ambassador Morrison led the group, with Commander Harris beside her. Jake stayed in the middle, trying not to draw attention. "I owe you an apology," the Emperor said, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Emperors didn't apologize. "You were brought here as guests and treated with suspicion based on manufactured evidence. This was unjust." Morrison recovered from her surprise quickly. "Your Majesty, we appreciate your words. We hope we can move forward constructively." "That is my intention," the Emperor replied. "I have reviewed the evidence of the control panel incident. The alarm was deliberately manipulated to make your people appear dangerous. Those responsible have been removed from their positions." Relief spread through the human group. Jake felt tension he'd been carrying for days finally release. "Furthermore," the Emperor continued, "I have been educated by my daughter about certain perspectives I had not considered. She argues that our two species could benefit from cooperation and cultural exchange. I am inclined to agree." He looked directly at Jake then, his silver eyes intense. "Engineer Murphy, please step forward." Jake's heart jumped. Why was he being singled out? He walked forward slowly, very aware of everyone watching him. "You sent me a message last night," the Emperor said, "breaking multiple protocols to do so." Jake swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty. I apologize if that was inappropriate. I just wanted to defend Princess Lyra and explain our position." "Your honesty is noted," the Emperor said. "My daughter tells me you have been helpful in understanding technical matters and approaching problems from different angles." "I tried to help, sir," Jake said. The Emperor studied him for a moment. "She also tells me you were talking in your sleep and said some interesting things about her." Jake's face went bright red. Several humans behind him tried not to laugh. Even some Valtori officials showed slight amusement. Princess Lyra looked mortified. "Father, that's not relevant to—" "Peace, daughter," the Emperor said, and there was the smallest hint of humor in his voice. "I mention it only because it demonstrates something important. Engineer Murphy spoke honestly even when unconscious. This kind of honesty is valuable." He addressed the whole group now. "I am proposing a joint project between our species, a research and cultural exchange program. Some of you will work with our scientists and engineers. Others will help us understand human art and expression." and we will teach you our technologies and philosophies." Ambassador Morrison stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is an incredible opportunity. We would be honored to participate." "Princess Lyra will oversee the program," the Emperor announced, "and Engineer Murphy will serve as the human liaison, working directly with her." Jake and Lyra both looked surprised. They glanced at each other, and despite the formal setting, they both smiled slightly. "This is not without rules," the Emperor added. "All interactions will be properly supervised and documented. We are beginning an important relationship between our worlds. We must do it correctly." "Of course, Your Majesty," Morrison agreed. The meeting continued with discussions of details and schedules, but the important part was done. Humanity and the Valtori would work together. The fear and suspicion were being replaced with opportunity. Later, after all the formal ceremonies ended, Jake found himself walking in a garden area of the ship. It was a beautiful space with plants from the Valtori homeworld, illuminated by soft blue light. "Engineer Murphy," a voice said behind him. He turned to find Princess Lyra approaching, with 2 guards following at a respectful distance, properly supervised as promised. "Your Highness," Jake said with a small bow. "I wanted to thank you," Lyra said. "Your message to my father made a difference. It showed him that humans can be brave and honest." "I just did what felt right," Jake replied. "You were the one who investigated everything and built the case. You took all the real risks." "We both took risks," Lyra said. She looked at him with those silver eyes that had fascinated him from the start. "And I wanted to tell you something. When I heard you talking in your sleep, calling me beautiful, hoping to see me again, it made me laugh, actually chuckle, something I hadn't done in years." Jake smiled, embarrassed but pleased. "I'm glad I could make you laugh, even accidentally." "It was important," Lyra said seriously. "It reminded me that feelings aren't weaknesses. They're part of being alive. You helped me remember that." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 beings from different worlds who had found an unexpected connection. "So," Jake said eventually, "we're going to be working together on this exchange program." "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "Teaching your people about Valtori technology and learning about human culture. It should be interesting." "Interesting is one word for it," Jake said with a laugh. "Terrifying is another. I'm just a regular engineer. Now I'm representing my whole species." "You'll do well," Lyra assured him. "You understand something that many of my people don't. That being different isn't threatening. It's valuable." Over the following weeks, the joint program began in earnest. Humans and Valtori worked together on projects, sharing knowledge and perspectives. There were misunderstandings and cultural clashes, but also breakthroughs and genuine friendships. Jake spent most of his time working with Princess Lyra. They balanced each other well, his intuitive approach complementing her logical precision. They developed new technologies together, combining human creativity with Valtori engineering. But more than that, they became true friends. They talked about their worlds, their dreams, their fears. Lyra learned to laugh more freely. Jake learned to think more carefully. They changed each other in small but important ways. Commander Harris and Ambassador Morrison watched this development with satisfaction. The relationship between Jake and Princess Lyra had become symbolic of what humans and Valtori could achieve together. 6 months later, when the human delegation finally prepared to return to Earth, the farewell was emotional. Real bonds had formed between the 2 species. Plans were made for future exchanges and cooperation. On the day of departure, Princess Lyra came to see Jake off. She carried a small crystal device, beautiful and intricate. "This is for you," she said, handing it to him. "It contains all my research notes and personal observations from our time working together. In our culture, sharing such things means deep trust." Jake accepted it carefully. "I'll treasure it. And I'll be back. We have too many projects unfinished." Promise? Lyra asked, and in that moment she sounded not like a princess, but like a friend who didn't want to say goodbye. Promise, Jake confirmed. They stood there, not quite sure how to say farewell. Then Lyra did something that surprised both of them. She reached out and took Jake's hand briefly, a human gesture she'd learned. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for talking in your sleep that night, for being honest, for helping me remember how to laugh." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for listening, for investigating the truth, for giving humanity a chance." The guards politely indicated it was time for Jake to board the Earth ship. He reluctantly let go of Lyra's hand and walked toward the airlock. At the entrance, he turned back one more time. Princess Lyra stood there watching him, silver eyes bright, and as he watched, she chuckled. That same soft sound she'd made when she first heard him sleep-talking. It was a sound of amusement, affection, and hope. A sound that represented everything they'd achieved together. Jake smiled back, then stepped through the airlock toward home. The journey back to Earth was filled with excitement. The delegation had succeeded beyond anyone's dreams. Humanity now had allies among the stars. The future was bright with possibility. But Jake spent much of the trip looking at the crystal device Lyra had given him, reading her notes and observations. Her intelligence and insight filled every page, but so did something else. Humor, warmth, personality. She'd included a final note at the end, written just for him. To Jake Murphy, the engineer who taught a princess to laugh. Our worlds are different in countless ways, but honesty, courage, and friendship are universal. When you return, as I know you will, we have much more to discover together. Until then, know that somewhere among the stars, someone is thinking of you and chuckling at the memory of sleep-talking and silver eyes. Your friend always, Lyra. Jake read it several times, feeling emotions he didn't quite have words for. Humans and Valtori were different species from different worlds. But somehow, through an embarrassing incident and honest connection, he'd found something rare and precious. He'd found a friend who understood him, and in the process, he'd helped build a bridge between worlds. As Earth came into view through the ship's windows, Jake thought about the future. The exchange program would continue. More humans would visit the Valtori. More Valtori would visit Earth, and he would definitely return to that massive ship and continue working with Princess Lyra. The alien princess who had discovered him talking about her in his sleep and chuckled. That chuckle had changed everything, for both of them and for their worlds. Sometimes, Jake reflected, the most important moments in history started with the smallest, strangest things, like sleep-talking and silver eyes and learning to laugh again. And as the ship approached Earth, carrying hope and friendship from the stars, Jake smiled and looked forward to all the tomorrows waiting ahead.